My parents refused to attend my college graduation because I chose a useless degree, but flew first class to see my brother graduate with a 2.1 GPA. This year, I was given an award at work, and they showed up uninvited, holding a poster. My boss whispered, "Are those the ones you told me about?" I nodded. What happened next was poetic. "Are those the ones you told me about?" My boss, Lila, was standing beside me at the Kennedy Center, peering down at the front row. I followed her gaze. There they were, my parents, Wallace and Marjorie, beaming, holding up a white poster board with glitter that read, "Our brilliant daughter, finally made us proud." I nodded silently. Lila looked back at me, her expression unreadable. Got it. Growing up in Charleston, South Carolina, our house always looked better from the outside. 2 stories, red brick, neat hedges trimmed with obsessive perfection. My mother, Marjorie, kept it that way because image was everything. Inside, it felt cold. Not physically, God knows she kept the thermostat like it was winter in Maine, but emotionally. Politeness was the family language, not warmth. Affection was offered on a conditional basis. Achievement was currency. My father, Wallace, was a numbers man. A financial consultant who believed in ROI on everything, investments, time, even children. My brother Aaron and I were not so much loved as we were managed. Or in my case, critiqued. Aaron could do no wrong. He once ran over our neighbor's mailbox while texting and driving, and my parents apologized to him for raising him in such a stressful environment. I once forgot to bring home a permission slip and got a full-blown lecture about responsibility. The real split came when it was time for college. I got into several schools, eventually choosing the University of Michigan for its cultural anthropology program. I'd always been fascinated by stories, how people lived, preserved memory, rebuilt identity after trauma. To me, it was more than studying the past. It was honoring it. But to my parents? It was a joke. A useless degree, my father said over dinner the night I told them. Good luck getting a job with that. My mother sighed and shook her head. Why can't you just do something practical? Business. Or medicine. Something people respect. I left the table without finishing my meal. They never really came around after that. During college, they sent money for birthdays, but never visited. Every conversation was laced with thinly veiled disappointment. Still, I pushed through. I worked part-time, studied late into the night, and by graduation, I had a 3.9 GPA and honors distinctions. I invited them. They didn't come. Said they couldn't make the trip. My dad claimed work was too hectic. My mom muttered something about the weather being unpredictable. It was May. That same year, Aaron graduated from Clemson with a 2.1 GPA. Not honors. Barely even average. But my parents were there in full regalia, flew first class, bought him a new suit, even hosted a backyard party for him when they got back. I saw the pictures online. I was sitting in my studio apartment in Ann Arbor, eating a peanut butter sandwich and refreshing job listings. I didn't cry. I just stopped talking to them for a while. Not fully estranged, but I withdrew. I called only when I had to. I stopped sharing details about my life, my goals, my career. It felt pointless. And yet, somehow, I still kept working. I landed an internship with a nonprofit doing cultural restoration in post-conflict zones. That led to a full-time job. Then a field project. I worked in Kenya, Guatemala, and then back in the US, helping rural communities preserve oral histories. I didn't make 6 figures, but I was doing what mattered to me. Eventually, I moved to DC for a position at the Smithsonian. It felt surreal, me, the girl who had once been told she was throwing her future away, now working on national cultural initiatives. I had a small apartment, a rescue cat named Rue, and friends who respected my work. Life wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Then, earlier this year, I was nominated for the National Impact Recognition for Cultural Advancement. A national award. My boss, Lila Kwan, had put my name forward. They're holding the ceremony at the Kennedy Center, she told me over coffee one morning. You're going to give a speech. I was stunned, grateful, and a little terrified. I told exactly 5 people. My friends. My boss. No one in my family. I didn't even tell Aaron. Which is why I was shocked, no, dumbfounded, when I got a Facebook message from one of my parents' friends the night before the event. So proud of you. Your mom and dad mentioned they're flying in for your big award. I stared at the screen. Not angry. Just confused. I never told them. Has someone else posted about it? Lila maybe? I doubted it. She was as private as I was. Maybe they had snooped, found the event listed online, and saw my name. Maybe they just wanted to be part of something shiny. Either way, I hadn't invited them. I hadn't even thought to. The next day, I arrived at the Kennedy Center in a dress I had thrifted and hemmed myself. Rue had rubbed against my legs that morning like she knew I was walking into something I couldn't yet name. Backstage, I was trying to calm my nerves when Lila nudged me. Don't panic, she said, tilting her head toward the audience. But you might want to look at the front row. There they were. My parents. My mother is in a fitted navy dress, pearls around her neck. My father is in a gray suit, holding a large sign in his lap. When he stood up, I saw the glittering letters. They had really made a poster. Like it was high school graduation all over again. I felt my stomach drop. That's when Lila leaned in and asked, "Are those the ones you told me about?" I nodded. Her face changed, like something clicked. Got it, she said, with a tight smile. And suddenly, I didn't feel so alone anymore. I stayed quiet backstage. I didn't want to cry or yell or cause a scene. The glitter poster alone felt like an ambush, like they'd shown up not for me, but for the optics. I hadn't seen them in person in nearly 3 years. Now they were in the front row of the most important night of my professional life, holding a sign that looked like it belonged at a pep rally. The MC introduced me. I walked onto the stage with practiced calm, my palms damp. The applause was warm, polite. I didn't look directly at my parents. I stood at the podium and began speaking. I had rehearsed the speech a dozen times in front of my bathroom mirror. I stuck mostly to the script, though when I reached the part where I thanked the people who'd supported me, my throat tightened. I want to thank the mentors who believed in my work before it was considered valuable, I said, voice steady. And I want to thank the communities who trusted me to tell their stories, and who reminded me why stories matter, even when some people don't understand their worth. I paused. There was a moment of silence in the room. My chest felt hot, but I kept my face composed. Afterwards, there was a light reception in the lobby, with wine, finger foods, and those little cheese skewers that never quite fill you up but make you feel fancy. I was in a small cluster of colleagues and grant committee members when I saw them approaching. My mother led the way, like she was walking onto a parade float. "Clara," she said brightly. "Wasn't that wonderful? You were so professional up there." I took a slow sip of sparkling water. "Thanks. We're so proud," she went on, as if rehearsing a speech of her own. "We didn't realize how big this event was until we got here. You should have told us." I looked her straight in the eye. "I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd care." My father chuckled nervously. "Come on now, don't be like that. Of course we care. You didn't come to my graduation." He stiffened. "That was a long time ago. You flew first class to Aaron's." My mom put a hand on my arm like she was trying to steady a tray. "Clara, we were just trying to be supportive tonight. We made a sign. We flew up on short notice. That should count for something." Before I could respond, Lila stepped beside me. She smiled, but it was tight, professional. "Hi," she said. "You must be Clara's parents." My mom brightened. "Yes. I'm Marjorie, and this is Wallace." We're so proud of our daughter. She's come such a long way. Lila looked them both over and nodded slowly. Oh. You're those parents. There was a pause. My mom blinked. Excuse me? You're the ones who told her anthropology was a waste of time. Who skipped her graduation? Who told her to do something people respect, right? My dad opened his mouth, then closed it again. My mother bristled. We didn't mean it that way, she said, the edges of her voice fraying. It's not that we didn't believe in her. We just didn't understand. Lila's smile didn't fade. Well. Now you do. She turned to me. We're going to do press in about 10 minutes. I'll find you when it's time. Then she walked away. My parents stood there awkwardly for a few seconds. I watched them try to figure out how to recover, how to reassert control. But there was nothing to grab onto anymore. No authority, no moral high ground. They had shown up to play proud parents, and someone had called them out. I didn't say anything else. I just walked away, too. Later that night, I lay on my bed in my quiet apartment, Rue curled up beside me. I still hadn't called them back. There were 5 voicemails by the next afternoon. Aaron texted me later that week. They're kind of freaked out. What happened? I didn't answer him either. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I had spent years grieving the relationship I thought I was supposed to have with them. That grief had turned into a sort of numbness, a quiet detachment that didn't need revenge or reconciliation. Just distance. I didn't return their calls. Not out of spite, but because I truly didn't know what to say anymore. I'd spent so many years hoping they'd wake up and realize they'd hurt me. But when they finally showed up, it wasn't because they understood, it was because they saw the stage. The audience. The prestige. They weren't celebrating with me. They were inserting themselves into my spotlight. The next week at work, Lila pulled me aside. Just so you know, she said, a few people were really impressed by how you handled that night. You were calm. Classy. And real. I thanked her, then hesitated. I'm not sure I was all that calm. You didn't scream or cry or crumble, she replied. That's more than a lot of people could say in your shoes. There was something comforting about her saying that. I didn't need validation, but being seen, accurately seen, felt different. It felt like someone had gently put their hand on my back and said, "You were right all along." The calls kept coming. My parents weren't pushy exactly, but they were persistent. A voicemail from my mom one morning was particularly emotional. "Clara, sweetheart, we just want to talk. I know we've made mistakes. But we're trying now, doesn't that count? We flew all the way to DC for you. Your father even canceled a meeting. Just call us back. Please." I didn't. Not right away. Instead, I focused on my work. The award had brought new attention to our program, and I suddenly found myself in meetings with donors and scholars who hadn't known my name 2 months earlier. We were offered a larger budget. 2 new team members. And one afternoon, while I was reviewing a proposal, Lila walked in and said, "Smithsonian wants you to keynote their summer lecture series." I just blinked. "Wait. Me?" "You," she said. "You've earned it." That night, I allowed myself to feel proud. Not for the title or the recognition, but for surviving all the years I thought I wasn't enough. The rejection. The doubts. The calls that never came when I needed them. I didn't cry. I just sat on the couch with Rue in my lap, slowly petting her while the city lights flickered outside. I thought about the girl I used to be, 19 years old, clutching a laptop, wondering if studying anthropology made her irrelevant. Useless. I thought about calling her. Telling her to hold on. Telling her it would all make sense someday. Then, I did something I hadn't done in months. I picked up the phone and called Aaron. He answered on the second ring. "Wow. Thought you'd blocked me." I didn't, I said, keeping my voice even. I just didn't know what to say. Yeah, he replied, and to his credit, he didn't try to joke or smooth it over. I get that. We talked, haltingly at first. Then a bit more easily. He told me our parents were confused. Hurt, maybe. That they hadn't expected Lila to confront them, but that when she did, it really shook them. They're acting like victims now, he said, not quite sarcastically, but close. Saying they were just trying to make things right. That you embarrassed them in front of your boss. I didn't say anything, I reminded him. I know. That's the irony. Then, more quietly, he said, Clara. I think you were always right. About how they treated us differently. I just never saw it clearly until recently. That caught me off guard. Aaron was rarely that self-aware, and certainly not about anything involving our parents. What changed? I asked. He sighed. They keep comparing me to you now. That made me laugh, dry and bitter. They didn't care about your GPA or mine, I said. They cared about the story they could tell. Aaron didn't argue. Maybe he knew I was right. Maybe he always had and just hadn't admitted it before. Look, he said, I don't know what you want from them, or if you want anything at all. But I think they do regret it. In their own messed up way. Regret is easy when the cameras are on, I replied. He didn't respond to that. A few days later, my mother emailed me. A long message. Paragraphs of apologies, or what I guessed were meant to be. They danced around accountability, used phrases like we didn't realize, and we only wanted the best, and you misunderstood us. She attached a photo of the poster they brought, as if I'd want a copy. As if it were something worth remembering. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to my therapist. We'd been unpacking the emotional landscape of my family for years, what it meant to grow up in a house where love was measured, not given. In our next session, she asked me how the email made me feel. Like they're trying to rewrite the past, I said. They want a chapter that ends with hugs and forgiveness, but they skipped all the middle pages. They want to jump from we hurt you to let's move on. She nodded. And what do you want? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know. The weeks that followed were busy. The Smithsonian lectures began in June, and I found myself in packed auditoriums, standing in front of young scholars, educators, and curious members of the public. My sessions were usually booked solid. I talked about cultural memory, heritage preservation, and how the stories we protect are often the ones that history tried to bury. After one lecture, a woman in her 60s came up to me with tears in her eyes. She had a notebook filled with underlined quotes and handwritten notes. You're doing something important, she said. I wish I'd heard of someone like you when I was younger. I went home that night and sat with that sentence. Not because it made me feel like a hero, but because it was the kind of affirmation I had waited years to hear, from my own parents. And now, I don't need it anymore. By August, things shifted again. I was asked to co-chair a new initiative, one that would work with national museums to diversify their exhibitions and ethically source indigenous artifacts. It was a leadership position, one that came with influence, visibility, and a lot more money. I accepted. A press release went out, and my inbox exploded. Articles were written. An interview I gave on NPR made the rounds on social media. My name was suddenly a talking point in academic and museum circles. That's when the letters started arriving. Not emails, handwritten letters from my mother. She said she was proud. That she hoped one day we could move forward. That family is everything and the past doesn't have to define us. I stared at those words, thinking, it already did. But I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on what mattered. Until one day, about 2 months after the promotion, I got a call from Georgetown University. They were organizing a public panel on cultural integrity in museum practices and wanted me to moderate. I said yes. What I didn't know, until the morning of the event, was that the venue had somehow been advertised in the local paper. The article mentioned my name. And somehow, my parents found it. I spotted them just before going on stage, sitting 2 rows back, Marjorie dressed in a soft lavender cardigan, Wallace flipping through the program like he was scanning a menu. I felt that old tightness in my chest, but this time it wasn't fear. It was clear. After the panel, as people mingled and the crowd buzzed with conversation, my parents approached me again. But I was ready. "Clara," my mother said, breathless. "That was brilliant." She looked around to see who was watching. My father nodded along. "You handled those questions like a professional," he added. I gave a neutral smile. "Thanks. I've been doing this a while." They laughed a little, unsure if it was a joke or a jab. "We're hoping we can sit down sometime," my mom continued. "You know, really talk." "Sure," I said. "You can schedule something with my assistant." Their faces faltered for a second, unsure if I was being serious. I was. Because by then, I had an assistant. And a schedule. And boundaries. Then came the moment I didn't expect. A young man approached us, holding a small folder. He looked at me, then at my parents. "Ms. Hanley, sorry to interrupt," he said. "We spoke by email. I'm a fellowship applicant from Nairobi. My grandmother worked with one of your teams years ago." My parents glanced at us. I smiled at him. "Right. You're interviewing for the fall cohort." "Yes," he said, a bit nervously. "I just wanted to say thank you. Your work inspired me. I didn't know people like you existed in this field." My mother's eyebrows lifted ever so slightly. I put a hand gently on the young man's shoulder. "Don't thank me," I said. "Just do the work. And make sure the people who once felt invisible can see themselves in every exhibit." He nodded, his eyes shining. He walked away. And then I turned to my parents and said, "That's why I do this." My father opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "I don't need a sign. I don't need a speech. I needed parents who saw me before the awards and the articles. You didn't. And now, I've stopped waiting for that." They stood in silence. No tears, no shouting. Just the reality of a door that had quietly closed long ago. I picked up my purse, nodded politely, and walked away. The final stroke of poetic justice came 2 weeks later. Aaron called again. This time, he sounded different. Tired. "They're upset," he said. "Said you embarrassed them again." "I didn't do anything," I replied calmly. "I just didn't give them the story they wanted." "That's what I told them," he sighed. "They're starting to realize they can't spin this. People are asking questions. Friends, neighbors. Why do they act like you're a trophy now, when they ignored you for years?" He paused. "You know what Mom said last night?" "What?" She said, "We didn't think Clara would ever become someone important. We just didn't think she had it in her." I let that sit for a moment. "That's the problem," I said. "They only respect what they can show off." "You're not going to forgive them, are you?" he asked. "I've already moved on," I said. Forgiveness doesn't always come with a welcome mat. And that was it. They keep trying, still, in small ways. Holiday cards. Birthday texts. Occasional calls that go unanswered. But I don't need revenge that scorches the earth. I prefer this version, the one where they sit in the front row of a life they never believed in, watching silently, knowing they're no longer invited on stage. Because sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is success without them. And peace that never needed their permission.